don't like the Shure X2U when it comes to having to set a
Okay,
level.
that'll work. It's a yep. Alex, the con is yours.
All right, great. Mickey, I'm going to give you Chris. I'm going to give you co-host. All right, great. You can hear me? Oh, sorry. I heard you twice there. Sorry. The preferences were different. Mickey, I'm handing you host. Please hand co-host back.
Copy that.
And there is the YouTube link. All right, here we go. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. And I'm Alex Lindsay, and we're here. We've got about 180 people here this morning, and so welcome here. I'm trying a slightly different setup, so if I look a little off, I'm trying to figure out where all my monitors are. We've got, if this is new for you, if this is the first time you've come, you'll notice that there's some people that are panelists and some people that are attendees. If you're an attendee, welcome. And just know that if you want to be a panelist, you just need to get here early. We open the doors at 6 o'clock, and then you have, we'll start doing mic checks. We started a little late today, which is why we're starting a little late today. It's all my fault. But normally we'll start mic checks close to 6:40. And so we'll do mic checks at 6:40. If you're not here by the time we get to mic checks, then you'll be an attendee. And so, anyway, so that's how you become a panelist. Make sure that you have good audio, good video, good internet, and be willing to be tested and to prove your mettle if you'd like to join. So, but everybody's welcomed. Just go ahead and kind of be ready to go through the process. Also, we have a Discord. So we have a lot of conversations. There's about 300 of us there. If you want to be part of the Discord, you have to be here at 6:30. We put out a link at 6:30 that lasts a half an hour. By the time I do these announcements, the link is dead, so you have to come tomorrow. And but if you'd like to join the Discord, we'd love to have you. Just remember to use your first name, last name, and then our request is to put your location in your name, kind of like what you see with the panelists here, as well as a photo of actually you. And the stretch goal is a photo over white. So that's kind of our request there. The one that is an absolute requirement is for you to have a first name and last name there. About once a week, I kind of graze through the member list and kick people out that don't follow that guideline. So anyway, so go ahead and do that if you choose to. We've got a lot of things going on. If you're new, we open at 6, we start talking. 7 to 8, we really just answer questions and kind of talk through those questions. And then we're having second hours, and now the second hours are every day. So 8 to 9 a.m. is a second hour where we talk about one subject in a little bit deeper sense. So someone's going to show us something or talk about something that we can all kind of get together and talk about. Today, we're going to Leland Best and Phil Lenger are going to talk about online weddings. They've started to build a system to do these online weddings, and we're really excited to see what they've come up with. So they're going to talk a little bit about how they're producing those. Tomorrow, Tucker Dragoo is going to talk about a stream that we kind of built a team around that did 14 languages. So 14 languages, 14 different streams, and how do we manage those? All the interpreters were somewhere different than the host. And so we're going to kind of get into the details of that tomorrow between 8 and 9. Jeff Keithley is going to talk about production in the cloud on Wednesday. So just to really talk about what he's doing with production in the cloud and really lead a conversation where we all talk about the cloud solutions that we're doing when we want to do the production without, being tied to space and time. Rick Markley is going to lead a discussion about volumetric capture on Thursday, how it works and what it means. And then finally, we're going to have a roundtable on Friday with talking about Crikey kits. What do we put into our production packs, our emergency production kits? So we're going to talk about that on Friday. Those are all the second hours. Saturday's our long day. We've got at 9 a.m. we talk for 2 hours instead of one on Saturday mornings. At 9, we're moving Nick Justishin. This is a note for everyone. Nick Justishin is going to move to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard. and he's going to be talking about Unreal Engine tips and tricks. We've got deep cuts with Steve Bays. Steve Bays used to be the product manager for Final Cut. So deep cuts in Final Cut with someone who really knows a lot about it. And by the way, I keep on saying this, but our Discord, the Final Cut discussion there is probably the best place to ask questions in the world right now. So because Steve's paying attention to it, you want to take advantage of that if you're using Final Cut. I'm going to be talking about building graphics for live events at 11 a.m. And then at noon, we're bringing in Aaron Mailer, who has been one of my key IT partners and streaming partners for a decade. And he's going to be talking about understanding network. There was a lot of people who were saying, I'd really like to understand more about IPs and network and so on and so forth. So Aaron's going to come in, and he's about as good as it gets when it comes to answering those questions for you. So that's what we got coming up this week. It's going to be a busy week. And without further ado, we're going to jump into the questions. Chris, do you have any questions for me?
By the way, I didn't. But a lot of other people do.
I skipped over that. If you're if you are an attendee and you want to ask a question, you want to put it into the Q&A. If you want to make comments, put it into the chat. Do not put comments into the Q&A. Do not put questions into the chat. And try to keep your comments down to less than 4 lines. Otherwise, we tend not to read them as fast, or get to them as quickly, and sometimes at all. Go ahead, Chris. First question.
Along those lines, Philip Shane in the chat said he loves the lineup, but in the Q&A, Philip asked, the cable news anchors all say that they're at home, but their sets appear to look identical to the studio. What do you think is going on? Who is setting this stuff up for them? What's your opinion?
Scott, do you want to jump into that at all? Do you want to bite on that? Scott still here?
I am here. I don't have a lot of insight into that right now. My understanding, a lot of them are using, courtesy of Alex and people like him, a lot of really smart keying of green screens of their home. But other than that, I don't know much.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a couple different things happening there. Some of them are building out their basements. So literally a crew comes in with masks and they're building out like small little studios in their basements. They're also using rendering. So they're sitting in front of something with a background. And we were talking about this last week, putting a big image in an 80-inch monitor behind them. That's the easiest, cheapest way to do it. And that's what's used in insert studios. So it's a well-known technology to broadcasters. So putting that behind them will make it look, if you don't cut to multiple angles, it would make it look exactly like the studio. And so there's not really, you could just literally take a shot from the studio and put it behind them and you wouldn't know. And so that's the case there. And then some of them are building it out, and some of them, as Scott said, are doing green screen. So the green screen stuff has gotten pretty darn good over the last bit of time. I think we've talked about it in the past. I'm on green screen, so it's an easier. It's definitely easier than building out the set. So I think those are probably the most of the solutions that we're seeing right now. And then to get their quality up, I think most of them are using some version of industrial fiber or industrial connections, which would be something like LTN or the switch, are getting put into a lot of their houses. A handful of them are using other things to come in, but I think those are the 2 big ones. And WebRTC, of course, for a variety of different endpoints to bring that in. But the other 2 are probably a little lower latency and a little higher quality. Jeff, did you have a comment there?
Yeah, I've actually got some experience with a few of the broadcasters that I know. They're definitely using LiveView. LiveView is probably the most popular when it comes to news, for breaking news, but also for this use, because you can just throw up their phone. They gave away their app for this period of time. So now with LiveView, you can just use their app just like the Lyrics broadcaster to pull SRT in, but it goes directly to the LiveView cloud, and then you can just add it in.
And I think, yeah, for probably some of the smaller scale stuff, that probably makes sense. But I think I'm thinking about the networks and
CBS.
They're really doing LiveView, because that seems like a really backwards thing to do.
Al Roker is 100% on a camera with LiveView.
That's amazing.
They actually did behind the scenes on it.
Because it seems like the latency would be very high.
No, it's better. If I watch every morning. I admit I watch CBS more than I watch the others, but CBS is fighting their morning shows, just fighting tooth and nail the delay. So whatever they're using, I don't know for sure what they're using for their morning show, but for sure I know that Al Roker is using it, because LiveView sent us some press. I'm a LiveView reseller, so they pushing it out there, and they sent us press out. I was like, yes, look at Al Roker using our tool.
Yeah, I've never seen the live view be stable at the kind of latencies that we're getting with even consumer connections, let alone, like a more industrial connection. So that's the part that I don't understand. Like I used to lease 2 live views. So I use live views every day, like every day, for a long time.
And we
So
do the same in our use too, but a lot of times it all depends on how it's set up, because you can get well under a second if you tweak it enough.
okay, something to think, something to look at. Next question, Chris. Thanks,
Paul
Jeff.
Edison Lam, I believe it's pronounced, I think the question they're asking is about side tone. They want to know the best way to monitor Zoom so that they know if their mic is muted. Maybe Brian can answer this. They need to hear themselves a little bit to make sure that, they're
Well, there's two things. There's 2 things there. Of course, Zoom's giving you a mix minus, which means you're not going to hear yourself back from Zoom. You can a lot of the mics and inputs that you may have will let you plug straight in. They have 0 latency connection, so you can hear yourself, but that won't tell you whether you're getting into Zoom or not. Brian, do you have any other things to add there?
Yeah, it's no. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, I want to hear the others. I want to hear myself back from Zoom, which is the exact definition of not a mix minus. So I get that. And in fact, I'm using my speakers today, but like when I do my earpiece, I actually dial some of me back into me, and then I use the mute on my mixer to achieve. So I understand the desire for it, but it sort of goes literally.
I mean, that would be the way. I mean, I think that what you're talking about is the way to be absolutely sure that you're going out is to never to set up a system that you can mute with a physical hardware, never mute in Zoom, and then essentially do some kind of side tone in your hardware, and then you always know that if you hear yourself, you're live. Yeah,
exactly. And then
unless someone like us, unless you let it leak in and someone like us muted you, then you're in that confused state. So that's the other piece.
I'm often in that confused state, but so that's kind of a normal thing.
That's another issue.
John Edelson.
Now I have to unmute. Zoom does have a feature where if you start speaking and it hears you and you're muted, you do get a warning. It says you're muted. So It doesn't let you hear it, but it does let you know if you're looking.
Yep. No, that's good. Chris, next question.
Todd Sutton is interested what your thoughts are on Apple's acquisition of Next VR.
I think that's a primary. I don't know, so I don't have any information. I just have opinions. My opinions are they've got a really strong patent. There's a lot of IP that they own that you just want to clear out. It's probably worth a lot of money, and that's probably not as much as they thought that they were worth. I think that they've raised more money than they got bought for. So that gives you a sense of how successful it was. Probably not as successful as they had hoped, but I think that they've patented a lot of things around stereo, around 180, broadcast. So I think that they, I never found the Next VR stuff that compelling. So I didn't, and I think that part of it was the stuff they picked to shoot, I didn't think was the stuff that I would necessarily pick. So I can see why they probably had some challenges, but I think that most likely they were bought for their patents. Anybody else have any other opinions? I'm sure they have some talent in there too.
Yeah.
But I think that primarily the patent pool is
Alex,
what they're probably. Yep. Go
I'm
ahead.
totally with you. The patent pool that Apple's trying to gather for stuff like this is increasing, and Next did have some really cool patent stuff. But their vision of their value and their value there was a large delta. Yeah,
and I think that the issue is that even if you're trying to go anywhere near where that is, you have to clear those patents, and if you're talking about, something as big as, just even the AR stuff might have been touched on. And so you just what you don't want to do is end up in another lawsuit that's going to cost you $1 billion. $100 million as an insurance case seems like a lot of money to us, but that's just an insurance policy to make sure that nobody else buys them and then sues them over them. So I think that's my guess, because I don't see a lot of value in what they were actually doing. So anyway, that's my 2 cents, Chris. That next question.
First off, I want to remind people two things about the Q&A. One, your question needs to be less than six lines or less. Two, nobody should interact with the Q&A window because it makes it very confusing to follow along what's going on here. Wide-reaching question.
The one
What's the best
interaction
way
you
to get
can do,
started
you
in
can,
this
you
business?
can, so to go back one thing with the Q&A, you can vote the questions up and down. Just don't answer them or deal with them. It's harder for that to go. But the how to get started in this industry. I mean, I think that the first thing to do is to come to things like this. Even if you don't understand everything we're talking about right now, that's not important. Like, don't get caught up in that you understand understand or don't understand everything that we're talking about right here. What you want to look at is slowly absorbing it. I mean, the most valuable thing that you can do is be around other people who know more than you do. And I'm around a whole bunch of people that know more than I do about one subject or another. There's many experts in this group that know their vertical better than any one of us, and that's the goal. And so that's the finding a group like this, whether it's this one or something else, is really important. And then being useful in that group. I was talking about it yesterday. I got my job at Lucasfilm and then Industrial Light and Magic working on Star Wars because I was on an online forum answering questions. Like, literally, that's how I got my job. like there's not any, like what happened was that I was on this electric image forum on AOL and AOL, whatever they called them, the groups. And I had no idea what I was doing, but I figured if I just answered questions of everyone who was posting stuff, these guys are in broadcast, they must know and know what's needed. And I figured that'd be the easiest way to learn and just solve their problems. And so, it was hard. Sometimes I would spend a whole day doing something that probably took them 15 minutes to figure out. But I learned very fast. But I didn't ask a lot of questions. I mostly just pushed in, and I would suggest asking more questions. It took me a lot longer than it had to. But as a result, when Lucasfilm was looking for folks, they pinged ILM or Electric Image, and Electric Image was like, well, there's this guy here. He answers everybody's questions. So it's, and then the guy at Lucasfilm, David Dezoritz, had seen me on the forum. So being useful in a community like this, whether it's this one or a local community that you're part of, I mean, my methodology is always just serve the community that you want to work in. Like that is find ways to do it. And if you're not making money doing this right now, if you can afford a camera, if you can go out and shoot stuff with your phone, if you can't, go out and get a camera if you can, find nonprofits or small businesses and do it for whatever you can do it for. What you need is reps, and I usually like to start doing things for free because I'm figuring them out. And then, but most of those things have done pretty well, over time. But serve and interact with folks. Those are and I haven't found a market that I couldn't crack doing those things. And that means every job I've had has always started with that process. And so I, and then I would, get into the things that you're most interested in. We cover everything here. We talk about, everything from 3D to video to audio, whatever you're passionate about, grab onto it. Start doing more of it, start asking people more questions, and go from there. Chris Summers.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, in starting out, I would also recommend just be open. I mean, when I joined the film industry a long time ago, I wanted to be a sound mixer and thought I would be a boom operator at first, and then through experiencing and meeting new people, my eyes got open to many other opportunities and things. And you eventually find you might have a passion for something else that might not be in the same vertical, but just be open. There's so much stuff out there to learn.
Bill Davis.
Yeah, I can't emphasize this enough because we think sometimes that we're just doing this with our friends and the people we communicate with directly, but large companies and important people in large companies are often watching these. I've had circumstances when I've gone to a booth at NAB or something like that, and I said, hi, I'm Bill Davis, and somebody said, oh, I've seen you on the boards, and these things go a long way. So be real careful about, be a little bit careful about your public presence on all the boards and things like that, because you think that nobody important is watching, but sometimes people who are very important are watching, and that could be your next gig.
Well, and that's also why it's one of the reasons that we drive such what I would consider professionalism within the Discord, within here, of how we interact with each other and how we display ourselves, in those areas. it's because it creates that experience. And there are people I know that there are people in our Discord and people watching here that are, even some of the folks that I won't out here, but there are people in our little panelist area that are, working for a lot of big companies. And so you want to, maintain, what you're looking at. And it doesn't mean that you can't say that you don't know how to do something. It means that you just want to be appropriate and really think through that. And so we do the best we can to create the rails around that to be successful. Jeffrey.
Yeah, I don't strive to be, do some of the film stuff and things that other people do. I stick more on the YouTube side. And with live streaming, I've been doing it since 2007 when I started with my Ustream account, and I've built a pretty good following, and I got clients that come on and ask me to do things. So, and of course, I'm learning. Just being as a panelist, I'm learning a whole bunch of stuff from all these guys right here. So you're in the right area, and just start and keep doing it, and people will definitely notice.
And especially the things that, when we're doing stuff where as a group, we're learning how to use a piece of software, or a lot of us are going to be diving more and more into Unreal Engine, for instance. If that looks interesting at all, the time to do it is when we're all diving into it, because you have lots of people that are thinking about it at the same time. We're going to be talking about Final Cut. We're eventually going to be talking about a lot of other software. And so those are things that if you're interested in them, if you're not, then don't waste your time on it. But if you are interested in those things, the time to jump on it is right now. Mickey, you had your hand up a little earlier.
Yeah, I was just gonna comment on what Chris was saying. It's interesting because I started out as a second AC, and then occasionally first AC as well. But I fell into doing sound, so it's interesting how our world is kind of like related.
Yeah, and there is so much to do in what we're doing, because it touches on everything. It's really you're connected to many, many, many different ways of thinking, whether it's education or video or audio or streaming and all these things. If you're here, if you somehow found your way here, there's probably something here that you can jump on. But I would say look more for what you're passionate about than what you think the business is. I think if you're what really makes people good at stuff is being that they're passionate about what they're doing. Chris.
Take every opportunity that you have to listen to people that have been doing it longer. Just listen. You'll be surprised how you'll hear something and squirrel it away, and like 2, 3, 5 years later, you'll go, "Oh, I know the answer to that."
Well, and also the other thing is that what happens when you're around people who know more about it and you're having those conversations, and what we're hoping that happens here is you start learning the language of each of these technologies. So then you ask better questions when you're dealing with people directly, then they give you better answers that tell you more, and then you learn more technology, and it's kind of a loop, that you're constantly learning more about the technology and more about those processes and deepening your knowledge there. But the first step is just to be absorbing as much as you can. And we're trying to provide as much of a resource in that area as we can. Chris, next question.
Ernest Floyd wants to know, you keep talking about 80-inch TVs for backgrounds. What's your minimum spec you look for when you buy those?
My minimum spec is 80-inch TV 4K. That's, we've used 1080p in the past, so it's not that you can't use 80. And our minimum spec is 70 inches. You can get away with 70, but you got to be a little bit closer. I've seen people do it with 60, but the problem is the person is right on the screen at that point. At 70 inches, the screen has to come a little closer to them, and the camera has to go back with a longer lens to get that to really fill the frame. At 80 inches, you don't really think about it. I mean, you just kind of frame it the way you want it. At 60 inches, you can do it. Again, the person's right up against the screen. You might see reflections and shadows. The camera needs a little bit of a longer throw. So again, 60 is possible. And we've tried to do it with 60s and 55s and just it was a nightmare to get what we wanted. So we really found that 70 is kind of the minimum size from our perspective. Does anyone else have any other experiences in that area where they?
Well, just that when I bought my 80-inch here, and my house isn't that small, they said, we can't bring it in. What do you want to do? So you got to keep in mind how big it is. So if they're going to bring it down to the basement, downstairs or whatever else, it's bigger than you think it is,
If you're going to load it, if you're going to put it in install somewhere, you definitely need help to do that. If you're going to deliver it, really think about, there are hydraulic lifts for monitors, and it makes all the difference. So you can get ones that have cranks, but then you can get ones that basically, we had one that was in a case. We built the case, and you basically, the whole top of it came off the monitor, and you just lifted it up, the whole top over the monitor, and the monitor sits in a hydraulic lift, and you hit a little button and it just goes up and down, and you get it, and you can readjust it. If you're doing this professionally and showing up at places, that's the way you want to, that's definitely the way you want to do it. Being able to easily adjust the seat, the monitor, and the camera. We use a hot pod for the camera, adjustable seats. We didn't end up getting it, but we got close to buying I think it's an accessibility chair that has a little knob that you can make the chair go up and down by enough 6 inches. And so we were very close before we closed our DC facility of having the camera, the desk, the seat, and the monitor behind, all on motorized things where we could kind of use them all to kind of adjust exactly what you needed for each one.
Yeah, I mean, my point
that'll
being
be the future.
To bring it in, they're going to bring it into somebody's basement from one of those cable news guys. It might not be able to go down the stairs. I mean, they really are that big. You don't. Realize,
you can get a. If you can get a, you just have to look at it. If you can get a sofa down, you can get an 80-inch down.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. All right, go ahead, Chris. Next question.
Greg Yotes wants to up his camera game, but he also wants to use Nikon AF lenses. Any recommendation for live streaming using Nikon AF lenses?
Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, I'm in the same situation, and I'm just now using the Blackmagic 4K camera, using a Nikon mount lenses with a speed booster. Pluses and minuses, you're not going to get any kind of an iris setting on the original lens. You'll have to do it from the speed booster, and of course, any autofocus that you might have on the lens or zoom all becomes manual. Other than that, here's an example of me using a equivalent 24-70 millimeter lens with Nikon. It's an F mount.
There you go. Next question, Chris.
Victor wants to know, besides the 32-point floating point, 32-bit floating point, what are other differences between the Mark I and the Mark III in the Mix Pre 3, whatever the thing is called?
Victor, can you be more specific about that? You're talking about the Mix Pre?
Yes, I'm looking at Mix Pre, and so other than the 32-bit floating point, what are the two big differences between the Mark I and the Mark II offering of that product?
I think I believe that the 32-bit float is the largest difference between the two. Mickey, did you have a note about that?
Yeah. Yes, the 32-bit float is the biggest improvement on it. But talking about the Mix Pre 3 and Mix Pre 6, you could now have the files copied onto a USB flash drive, which was previously only available on the Mix Pre 10. And also with the second generation, you could now adjust the limiter settings on it, which before it was all a preset automatic thing.
That's great.
Thank you.
And they're amazing little boxes. I definitely use mine on the road, and it's the preamps should not be under. I even put it in. Even if I'm going into a camera, I want to have something with a limiter or something with a really strong preamp. Coming at my mic going into that and having it really be treated properly before and be able to record that as a second piece, I think is pretty important. So,
my biggest fear as a musician, though, is that I'm used to a traditional Apollo or a unit like that for multi-tracking, and so my fear is, am I going to be able to use this with a DAW and still remain all the power as far as my sends and all of that kind of thing? So that's the one question I'm still researching.
There's definitely a lot of routing. I haven't routed as much in the Mix Pre as I have in some of the larger mixers, but there is a fair bit of routing that's within those. And I think the one thing that's different, the Mix Pre 3 really doesn't have any balanced, or it doesn't have any, the TA3 outs, which I believe are in the 6 and the 10. And so those are things that when you're thinking about routing, thinking about creating a mix minus, thinking about those types of things, I like to have that's the only reason I'd want necessarily the slightly larger one. That and some surround recording that there's not enough inputs on the Mix Pre 3 to do to do that, to hook it up to my Ambio lens or my Ambio mic. Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, it's only the Mix Pre 10 that does have the TA out. The 6 is still unbalanced. And also, Victor, there is a musician plugin for the Mix Pre, which will allow you to do the overdubbing if you wanted to do it within the mixer.
Thanks, Alan.
Yeah. And it's just, and again, as a field recorder too, it's just amazing to have in the kit. Go ahead, Chris, next question.
Charles Klein wants to know, in terms of audio interface, he wants to do good video streaming and audio there, but he also wants to be able to set up his Genelec studio monitors, mixing in post. I'll tell you what I do is I make sure that my mixer has one volume for the speakers and one for headphones. That helps me solve a lot of problems, but I'm sure other people have some input.
Anyone else? Brian? Seems like a question for
Yeah,
Brian.
Called on. I mean I mean it's one of those things. It's like, and this actually tied on a little bit to the previous question. Once you start down the rabbit trail of I'm looking for an audio interface, you know, you can start at $20 and go up to $20,000, and there's at every point, you know, you add other capability. It really, you know, ultimately comes down to, you know, I will say, you know, if you're primarily using the audio input side just to do these kinds of things, you know, webcast calls, whatever, then having a super pristine mic pre may not be a huge value add for, you know, hundreds of extra dollars. And if you're only concerned about from an output side, you know, just line level going to your monitors, you know, you may be able to get away with you know, a simple little 2x2, you know, one of the little Focusrite Scarlets or, you know, any number of those little guys would probably be just fine. Because that's all you needed. Now, I will say, the second that you get a 2x2 audio interface, you need one more output, or you need 3 more input. Like, it always seems to go that way.
Yeah.
So
we've gotten pretty good at, you give us a mixer, and if it's got a certain amount of IO, we pretty much figure out how to fill that up. You know,
There's another way. There is another way. Just put a set of earbuds under your headphones so that you have one routed in one end and the other on the other. So it works that way.
I actually done that with when I'm talking to the comms and sometimes with a client with phones. Is I have 2 sets of AirPods and I have 2 different phones, and I have them. I'm listening to both of them. It's like my weird messed up comms. Mickey, you had a comment there.
Yeah, same. Pretty much, Brian covered it. It depends on what you need. Like, how many channels do you need out? Are you doing surround? Yeah, if you're doing 5.1, that means you need at least 6 channels out. And also, like, do you need a monitor controller built into the interface as well? A lot of interfaces don't have it, but a lot of the ones geared to the more prosumer and like the cheaper Focusrites have built-in monitor controllers. So there's a lot of stuff to take into account. As well as do you need analog and digital interfaces as well?
Right. Go ahead, Tucker. And then we'll move on.
That just tagging on to what Nikki's saying, the control room out is kind of the function that I would look for when you're looking for a feature set. I personally use an Allen Heath Z10, which has a kind of control room bus function, so you can mix what you want to hear in your Genelecs versus what you hear in your ears versus what you are actually sending to Zoom or whatever platform you're going to. So the control room route function.
Jeff Francis, then we'll move on.
I was just going to second Brian's. The Focusrite Scarlett range has a nice big knob for your control room monitor outs and a separate headphone volume knob. So it's simple, easy to use.
Okay, Chris, next question. Chris.
Interesting problem. What's the best way to reliably stream a video in high quality, but also include that video into the interactivity that you get from Zoom? Is there a way to like separate, like maybe I want to take this guy, send him out, but tie that into a Zoom conversation?
Well, there's a couple different ways to do that. The question really is just how much hardware you want to add to make that work. So, you know,
I happen to know this guy, and he's not afraid of hardware. I'll tell you.
Yeah,
that.
Exactly. And possibly software, of course. Some of you will be saying, well, I can do this all in vMix or in TriCaster, and they're absolutely correct. So or Memo Live. But what, regardless of whether it's hardware or software, what you need to be able to do is you need another mix that's going to basically do a screen scrape, of Zoom. And you can do that as your second monitor. You can have this, you can set up a second monitor in Zoom, have that go out to that second monitor. That second monitor is going to a switcher. And that is typically the full frame of people talking. And then if you really want to, you could probably clean up the monitor here and grab that one as well. Remember that you don't have to have all the interface. You could close the interface off. You can scale it up a little bit and, knock out all the interface stuff that you're looking at. So you got those two as inputs, and then you have your own input that you can be cutting to from your location, whether it's one camera or 3 cameras or 5 cameras. And then that's all switched together, audio and video, and you're then sending it out, whether it's a software encoder like OBS, or a lot of these have them built in, whether it's vMix or ML Live or TriCaster, and those will you can stream those out software, or you can run it into a hardware encoder. But it's really building another separate switch that's going to incorporate all of those things that are involved there. And because Zoom has a mix minus, and so does Meet and a lot of these other ones, you're just grabbing that audio. The big thing is just making sure that as you pass your audio into your signal, that you find a way to make sure that you're giving mix minus back to the online piece. Otherwise, they'll hear themselves as you're trying to do it, especially if you're trying to do it in the same switcher. And I thought I saw some hands. Oh yeah, Jeffrey.
Yeah, to add on that, I can't speak too much on the Mac side because I haven't done it too much, but on the PC side, there are certain capture cards that will allow you to actually go into multiple outlets. Like for instance, I could bring my video into Zoom, and I could bring it into Wirecast or vMix. I could bring it into Skype all at the same time. I'm always using my audio separate from my video. So in this case, it's this podium mic right here. It could be the iRig, or it could be a Focusrite or something like that. But a lot of times I can actually just split them right through the computer, and that works. But if you want something with like Wirecast or vMix where you're doing lower thirds and things like that, yeah, there's definitely virtual outputs that will go there, or NDI, which will go to a lot of stuff at the same time. But you also got to remember there's going to be a little bit more of a latency when you're going from one to another, you're daisy chaining it through it.
That's great. Leland?
That was a good explanation. If you want to see it in action, stick around for another hour after the question and answer, and I'm going to get into some pretty heavy detail on how we used virtual cables, NDI, and WebRTC to incorporate Zoom and people from outside of Zoom into the same conversation. So you should find that interesting.
That's great. I can't wait. Next question, Chris.
This may feather in with what Leyland was just talking about. Can you discuss lighting for streaming and recording with iPhones at weddings? Specifically, they're talking about bright hot spots, overall levels, how the auto gain works. A lot of question.
Yeah. So, and this is not really touching on what well, maybe it is, but what Leland and Phil are going to talk about.
It was a rough segue. I apologize.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But I've worked a couple weddings in my early days. In another life, it feels like I DJ'd like 400 weddings and worked with a lot of videographers there. And this is almost 30 years ago. So I've been to a lot of them and experienced a lot of the lighting, and then I shot a 360 a couple of years ago, to kind of play with that idea. If you're hoping to make consumer equipment look good, my recommendation is lots of soft light. Big sources. I've worked at a couple events where they use lights called air stars, and I worked one event. This wasn't a wedding, but it was a corporate event, and they must have had 20 air stars. And air stars are basically these giant balloons that are, in this case, I think they were 6 feet in diameter, and we used to own a couple of them. And they put them up, and you can drape some stuff over the top so they don't go all the way up. And they're giant. They're like giant China balls, but they're really bright. and you can suspend these. In this case, I think they were hung, but you can also you can have them, suspend them, and usually you kind of suspend them somehow, and there's a couple guide cables that hold them up and everything else, but they produce a lot of light, and what happens is that it's not very directional, but it means that everything kind of feels like, I always feel like if you ever saw The Game, there's this look at the end of when he breaks into the hotel at the end, and it has this big warm soft light. That's what it feels like. Yeah, and there's you can get some other ones that are these are slightly these are some that are similar to those. And so anyway, so you can get these are job site lights, and the question really when you have job site ones is whether they'll how much noise they'll make. These are going to be less expensive than the ones you buy from
$4,500.
Yeah, so the ones that the ones that we got, I think, were 6,000 to 8,000 each, for those, and so anyway, so that's the but I would definitely and I don't know how we got in. I got somehow. Be careful of doing screen shares during the thing, because it takes over my screen. I can't see anybody. So anyway, so or spotlights. Anyway, I don't know why that took over. That usually doesn't. That's the first time it's happened in a long time. Anyway,
I think somebody pinned my video, Alex, because I was showing the balloon. That's all.
It is, but
pinned my video.
I just don't usually see that. Usually it doesn't happen. It was an odd experience there. Anyway, but big soft lights is what I would say. That's going to make everybody's cameras work way better. Like you can have all this other light, you can do all the interactive stuff, but if you create that big soft light, the only place not to do that is around the DJ. I used to be a DJ, and the two things you looked at, if there was a lot of light, you wouldn't have as many people dancing, and if it was a cash bar, you knew that it was going to be a slow night. But as a DJ, if it was an open bar in a relatively dark area where you're going to do your dancing, there's going to be a lot of fun. And so anyway, that's my DJ advice for you. But as how to make your cameras work well, everybody's consumer cameras work well, big soft lights make a big difference. Chris, go ahead. Next one.
Next question. We've talked about this a little bit. What experience, especially the panelists, has anybody been using a service called Open Reel? I know a little bit about it. They claim that their technology is patented, but John Wigglesworth wants to know if anybody has any some knowledge.
I don't have any knowledge about Open Reel. Can you give us some more information?
Brief synopsis. Open Reel is the ability to reach into somebody's iOS device, control it, monitor it, and share that feed with multiple subject matter experts, basically to be able to record remotely while you're watching from that device, and then be able to get the high quality 4K files at a later point.
It sounds cool.
I happen to know.
Is it expensive? I don't know.
Super expensive.
Oh.
I mentioned it once before a few weeks ago. I think the last I heard, they sell you 25 hours worth of production time for $4,500, and every person that wants to watch and monitor is an extra $1,200.
Well, I guess they're pretty secure in there. They feel like they've got a patent that's locked up, because that seems like for that much, I'd probably buy people a second phone and
it
talk to them.
Seems like we could invent something that does the same thing with just the brain trust in this room, for sure.
But patents are complicated. So that's a pretty expensive solution. There'd be a lot of people looking for some other way around it. But yeah, I don't.
Android just announced, or Google just announced that in Android 11 they're natively supporting screen recording. Also useful, not live, but still useful.
Right. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yeah. So this one's just like, I guess, is really taking over the whole phone. It could be interesting. I mean, I think that yeah, we'll see where it goes. I'm not familiar. I mean, I know you talked about it a little bit, but I'm not really familiar.
I have a friend who's using it and he loves it. He said he knuckled down, he paid the money. It's keeping his business afloat. It's keeping his clients happy. and he's getting good quality video remotely, and he loves it. But he goes, yeah, it was expensive, but it's working.
You know, everything is like that. You know, everything is a value. You know, it's just the value proposition. It's what the ROI is. You know, if they're giving you something that's expensive, as long as, you know, I always one of the equations that I've talked about a couple of times here is that when possibility is greater than circumstance equals action. You know, every time. You know, if your possibility is bigger than the circumstance of the circumstance here being $4,500, if your possibility of making more money is more, then there will be action. You'll do it. And, you know, and if so there's definitely people who will spend a lot of money on something for either tangible or intangible reasons. But I think that there's definitely probably people making money with it, but it's going to be a pretty small market. Go ahead, Chris. Next question.
Okay. Michael Jones says, I'm beginning to learn that all Thunderbolt and USB hubs are not created equal. Any recommendations? Thank you for the short question.
I wish I had a good answer for a short question. We've bought a couple hubs and they all seem to work. I guess I haven't run into any dead ends. I didn't buy anything specifically expensive on Amazon. I think it was actually the quote unquote Amazon choice or whatever. I think I was like, oh, this looks fine. But I don't think I was getting Thunderbolt ones. I've been getting mostly the hubs I've been getting are USB 3 or USB C hubs. And USB C, Thunderbolt, not the same. Not that I'm bitter. Does anyone have any specific?
Very much not the same. And you want to make sure that you're a powered hub. Other than that, it's trial and error at this point. There are a lot of good chipsets and there are a lot of bad chipsets out there.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, that's been my experience. I noticed that the very first ones I buy when I get a new laptop tend to run extremely hot. In fact, I've had some that run so hot that you could touch them and almost burn yourself. And then it seems like the later ones use more advanced chipsets or whatever, and they stop performing like that. They all kind of work, but there are things.
Mickey?
Yeah. For the Thunderbolt hub, I got one from Promise, and it seems to work pretty well. So right now I have 3 of them because they're just
great.
No problems at all.
And these are Promise Thunderbolt?
Yeah, I think TD3000 or something like that. I'll Google it.
TD3000. That's great.
I have the Aki USB C Hub, which is not the cheapest, but it works great. That's what I was using on the Chromebook, and I had one that actually got hot and failed and whatever else. So don't buy the cheapest one, or your random Chinese vendor.
Tucker?
Yeah, I would with anything like that, I would try and find a store that kind of vets their products, kind of like DVE Store does. As far as somebody who, like, for Thunderbolt, I would look at Mac Sales website, because they are really good about vetting the products that they carry. And letting them do a little bit of that legwork for you. Obviously, reaching out to a group like this is another really great option. But when you don't get a good answer back, which, I mean, I think you're getting a lot of good answers in this case, but go to some place like that, Mac Sales, DVE, some of those places.
And given, if only we knew someone from DVE Store here. I mean, if we could talk to someone. Guy, do you have any recommendations?
I don't, because I'm using a cheap one. In fact, if somebody wants to take over my camera, you could zoom into the one that I'm using. I'll switch over to this other USB camera, and if somebody wants to take over and zoom down there, you'll see one that I recommend not to get. So I'm looking at that CalDigit, and I appreciate Mickey's advice, because I actually did an interview at CES with the CEO of Mac Sales, and they put a lot of development into those things. So they're no joke. I mean, mine does hiccups almost every morning where I have to unplug it and plug it back in. So get the good stuff, don't get the cheap stuff.
Great. Chris, next question.
A little bit selfish. I'm asking kind of for myself. I like this one. Any tips on getting a good key in Final Cut Pro 10? The guy, Salvatore says, I shoot in HLG1, I don't know what that means, on a Sony, so my skin is at 60 IRE when filming. Alex, a few months ago, I asked you about the Hiwaki keyer in Final Cut 10. You said you weren't familiar with it. That's what I use for doing green screen, but your opinion.
So I need to get back to you on that one. I understand what you're asking, because you're shooting in HDR. HLG is HDR.
Oh, is that what that is? I didn't know what that was.
And so I have not done that. I mean, I've definitely keyed from log, but I haven't done it from HLG, and I don't have a good answer yet. But a lot of my summer looks to be focused a lot on HDR, so I'm going to be thinking pretty hard about it. So bring up that question again in a couple weeks, and give me some time to think about it. But what I'll do is I'll shoot some. I haven't really shot any green screen footage here, and all the green screen that I've done so far has been with. And one thing to think about is converting the footage. You may find it easier to do it because you may find it easier to convert your footage to SDR because you don't care whether you're not getting color. You're just trying to get a matte. So if it's not keying your HDR footage or your log footage, you may find it easier to go and convert it to a linear format like Rec 709, pull your key, and then reapply it back to the thing. And now that'd be the first thing that I would do if I was in a rush. And I need to think about it a little bit. And, I might talk to, it brings up, if someone can remember to put in the second hour, Steve Wright with a W, Steve Wright, not the comedian, although he is funny sometimes. But we should get Steve on to talk about that. That would be a good one he's probably the world expert in keying. So let me see if I can get a hold of him, but I don't have a strong answer for HLG. I mean, I was going to give you a bunch of ideas, but I need to think on that one a little bit. Next question.
Audio streaming, Shoutcast versus Icecast. Why use one over the other?
Does anyone have any opinions? This is audio streaming, right? Yeah.
Oh,
Yes, sir.
wow.
Okay. Go ahead, Jason.
Okay. So, Shoutcast and Icecast are extremely old. The real difference is that one inserts ads and the other one doesn't. So with Shoutcast, you need a server on the other end, as far as I know, unless you want every single stream. If you've got 4 listeners, that's 4 times the bandwidth. Icecast handles the bandwidth, but does it a little bit differently.
And is there a more modern solution for audio streaming?
There are lots of them. Usually you would just do a YouTube stream and put your logo right there.
Well, so but what if you want to really actually do a strong, like a real high-end audio stream? I mean, we have encoders. So we have encoders that we've used to do that, but they're going straight to a radio station or straight to iHeartRadio or something. And I have them in there specifically so I can give it to them the way they ask for it. But I haven't really tried to push them to a public site for those things. But outside of using YouTube, go ahead, Jason.
So Shoutcast will actually do a really high-end stream. As long as you have a server, again, that hosts it, you will get a very high-end stream. And a good server will relay just about anything you give it.
Okay. Sky?
I'm just curious about Jason's definition of how old something might be, because he and I are of a different age group. I'm curious, as I'm trying to stay relevant, what do you refer to as old?
Well, I started internet broadcasting in 2005, and Shoutcast was brand new then.
Yeah, and I think we were doing Icecast in earlier than that, right? 2004, 2005. I mean, they're and I don't think they've changed much.
I think it might have been actually 2001. It's really old.
I'm just curious about the whole Moore's Law thing and Moore's Law.
Well, I think that
yeah, but you said Moore's Law is 2 years old.
Really
so
is that
out of date.
I mean, the thing that kind of has really slowed audio streaming down is the cost of music. The stream music is super expensive, and so it's the music industry has basically ceded all control to Apple and Spotify and everybody else because they we're not smart. And they're gonna eventually be they're gonna be basically disconnected from the artists within the next decade. They're still useful right now, and they did it all because of control. They're trying to control it, so they made it really expensive to stream, and so they didn't allow people to spread that out and make the music available. And now they're stuck with only a handful of big players that at any moment could just squash them. Like if Apple, Apple at any moment decided I don't want to do this anymore, could just start signing the art. I mean, I'm sure that their contracts don't allow them to do it right now. It's probably part of the streaming contract, but I mean, if you look at Netflix, I mean, I don't go to Netflix anymore to watch somebody else's movies. I go to Netflix to watch Netflix stuff, you know, like, and I think that's a model that could be reproduced, obviously.
Well, Discovery did that, and they try to do that anyway. Discovery Channel.
Yeah. So I think that's, you know, I think that the music industry continues to just, I used to work in the music industry. It's not, you know, it's not run by rocket scientists, you know, like, so, you know, it's a lot of people who are really good at knowing people, you know, and so there's not a lot of critical thinking oftentimes there. There are a handful of people who are really good, but if you're really good at in the music industry, you go up really fast, you know, probably faster than you're ready for, because there's not a lot of competition. Grant.
Oh,
Icecast was first released in 1999, by the way.
1999. Okay. And go ahead, Grant.
I had heard this and I just checked it. You can do Facebook audio. Sorry, I've got a heater blowing on me. It's freezing in here. There's Facebook audio, Facebook Live audio only.
Is it? I thought
I've never seen one, but you apparently can do it.
They launched it, and I was super excited about that, and then I thought they took it away. So, but no one's ever actually used it.
Right. I've never seen it, but I'm looking at a page.
Because they launched it, but I don't know if it's
about it.
Okay, I'll do some more research on that, because I thought that they launched it and then they turned it off. Maybe they turned it back on again, because I was super excited when it came out. Yeah. When that was like years ago, 2, 3, 4 years ago, that Facebook, you know, put it out. And I think there's a huge opportunity. Like, I'm more interested in making this discussion that we're having right now. I'm far more interested in making it available over audio than over YouTube. Like, if I, you know, that's, you know, and the reason I'm really interested in the streaming is specifically because I'm like, oh, it'd be really good to put this over, you know, if people could just basically ask one of our devices in their kitchen or whatever to play this at 7 o'clock, you know, in the morning, Pacific Standard Time, that would be amazing, you know? And so I think that, I'm more interested in that process than I am in a lot of other things. And so we're doing some more research in it. So we'll keep on digging into that, because my plan is sometime in June is to be finding a way to stream this on audio as well as make it a podcast. So that's part of why we're doing all these mic checks.
This is specifically saying about the Android app. I haven't got an Android on me. So if someone could just check, it says it's only tap the live button and then it says tap live audio.
Okay. All right. We'll have to do do some more research.
Someone can have a look.
I got a couple people.
Then we would miss the daily growth of Chris's hair.
All right, we're shifting gears. It is 8 o'clock. It is. I'm going to go ahead. Can you hand me back the host for a second so I can kill this stream? Mickey, can you hand